Hi guys, and welcome back to Bell's YouTube channel and the Behind the Blog series. So today we are talking with one of Bell's founding coaches, Nikias Tomasello, about something that he is super passionate about, and it's another myth that we're trying to bust here. So Bell as a business, we connect people with their ideal online coach, but we're also very big on changing the culture in the fitness industry, because there's a number of things within it at the minute which are probably not good for people's health, overall health in the long term. And part of that process and trying to, make that change is to sort of try to bust certain myths. And today we're talking about why women can get strong and build strength, and why it's something that's not just reserved for men. Nick is going to talk to us a little bit about that and explain sort of why that is a myth. So before we dive into that, if you want to just give a little bit of an intro to yourself so people can kind of get a feel for who you are, before we dive into the topic for today.
Sure. Thank you, Liam, first of all, for having me as an interviewee again. It's always a pleasure. And then, hello, everyone. My name is Nikias Tomasiello, and I'm an online coach and also one of Bell's founding coaches, as Liam kindly introduced me. I've been working as a face-to-face personal trainer as well as an online coach for a number of years now.
Cool. So, I want to just kind of, I guess, frame the conversation by asking you what is kind of just explaining what this myth is, and sort of, where it comes from, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the myth that I was trying to bust in this article and that I was very keen to bust was the myth that apparently women do not get the same benefits from lifting weights as men might get. And in my experience working with women and also speaking to women on the gym floor, working as a personal trainer, I've realized that a lot of them think that their body isn't suited to gaining the same amount of strength or muscle mass as a man's body. I got the inspiration to write the article from a conversation with an online client of mine who basically during one of our conversations told me, oh, I'm not quite sure if I'm gonna make as much progress as another client of mine who she knew who is a man. And she said, and she gave a reason for that. She said, I don't think it's gonna happen because I'm a woman. I don't have testosterone in my body. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. You don't need freaking testosterone to make a lot of progress in the gym. But that just reminded me of how frequent, how common this myth is, at least, from what I've experienced from the people I've talked to, and really drove me to wanting to write the article.
Yeah. No, that's yeah. I think it's something that there's maybe a lot more information about why it's great for women to be weightlifting and resistance training nowadays, but it's actually maybe not as common as we think, or it doesn't reach as widely as we think. So it's still important for us to still talk about this sort of thing. What do you reckon are kind of some of the, you know harming effects of people, or women in particular, believing that they can't get the same results or same benefits from weight training as men can?
So, if we're talking about physical health, we know that resistance training is really important for bone health. And women are actually a bit more at risk of detriments to bone health with aging than men are. So, actually, for them, resistance training could potentially be more important than for a man. We're also, and also, if we're talking about mental health, we know that resistance training has a really positive impact on mental health, and we've spoken about this in a previous interview because I actually wrote a blog post on the benefits of resistance training for women for Bell before. But yeah, speaking of mental health, it does have a positive impact, and also in not just in terms of general mental health, but specifically in terms of confidence. I find that resistance training, and in general, we know that resistance training has the effect of increasing your self efficacy, which is basically your belief in yourself. And if you believe in yourself as a result of lifting weights, then you're more likely to take important steps in your daily life as well. So resistance training basically can make you better in everyday life, just like what Bell stands for. And that's the benefits that women aren't getting, aside from the results in terms of actual physical strength gains and muscular gains that they could gain from engaging in this activity.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to highlight as well because we're currently in, as we're speaking, in Mental Health Awareness Week, and May is a month of raised awareness around mental health. So I think it's always really important to highlight training as a great method of helping to strengthen your own mental stability and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's definitely something that people don't want to be missing out on. Now, is there any reason in particular that you are so passionate about this and feel like it's something that you want to address and try to tackle?
I wouldn't say there's any particular reason other than it is something that I've noticed because I have worked and do work with a lot of female clients, people who identify as women and who were born in a female body. And also, I'm just quite passionate personally about female physiology, so and biology, and just how they might differ from males.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough. So obviously, it's we want to kind of dispel this myth. So in the blog post, you kind of mentioned three main reasons why the fact that women can't benefit as much from weight training as men is a myth. You kind of cited three particular reasons. Can you just kind of introduce us to sort of what those reasons are and essentially, I guess, bust this myth?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into that. So, reason number one, why women can get the same benefits as men from resistance training. So that reason is that men and women can actually gain muscle and strength at similar rates relatively to their starting point. So what I'm saying is that men are usually born with a little bit more muscle mass, which also results in them being a bit stronger, whereas a woman is born with slightly less muscle mass and therefore is a bit less strong. But if a woman and a man both start training and they train consistently for a number of years, the relative gain in muscle mass and strength that they make is very similar. So if the man gains 10% of their starting strength and muscle mass, the woman will gain pretty much the same amount. So the only difference in the ultimate result is based on their starting point. So basically, when you're thinking, oh, well, what's the point in me lifting weights? I'm not going to make much progress at all. Well, actually, no. You're going to make as much progress as you can based on your genetics and your starting point, which can be actually quite a lot. And has nothing to do with your the sex and the body that you were born with. That's the first reason. Then you've got reason number two, which is which is specific to the way women's bodies might differ from men. And this reason is that women actually seem to be better able to recover from resistance training a little bit more. It's not like a night or day difference, but they are slightly better at recovering. And it seems like they can also have a bit more muscular endurance. So for example, if a woman is lifting 80% of her max for as many reps as she can, she is going to do maybe one or two more reps than a man lifting 80% of his max for as many reps as he can. And we don't actually know exactly yet what the reason for this is. There are a few scientific theories, but we still, unfortunately, we need a lot more research on women subjects. I say unfortunately because right now the majority of research on resistance training is done in men, but things are luckily changing now that resistance training is becoming more popular for everyone. And then you've got the final reason, which is that estrogen, so the main female sex hormone, one of the main female sex hormones, actually seems to potentially, according to some research we've done, protects against muscle damage. So, muscle damage from resistance training is normal, and not having any muscle damage actually might lead to getting no results from training or very small results. So, some muscle damage is good, but when you're getting too much muscle damage, that's when you can't recover, your muscles can't recover, and you don't make any gains. So having this protective effect against muscle damage is actually a huge benefit for women to protect them from potentially overtraining and not recovering effectively from training.
Yeah. No, I think those. To be honest, before you'd written and but before I'd read through the article, I probably wouldn't have picked out that those as reasons why this was a myth. So it was really good to hear about them and to learn a little bit more about them personally. So I'm sure there's lots of people as well that will be in the same position. So just start sort of touching on the first sort of reason that you gave around men and women being able to increase their strength, relatively in the same, at the same capacity, sort of relative to their starting point. Where do you think the idea that actually men will gain more strength than women will, like, do you have any ideas as to where that comes from?
Well, from what I've seen, what happens is that often a man starting out in the gym for the first time will go straight to the weight room, whereas a woman will be more likely to join a class or maybe do just some cardio. Obviously, it isn't just based on your gender or the way you were brought up, basically the gender role that you were made to think you had in society. Like there are men who just do cardio and there are women who go straight to the weight room. But I have seen that this seems to happen more commonly, like this is the pattern that people follow. And also and the reason for that, from what I have experienced, is that men tend to think that they are too small and not very muscular. So basically, what I'm implying here is that the where this comes from, this belief, is from the ideals that society gives us for men and women. The ideal man, quote unquote, is very muscular. The ideal woman, quote unquote, is very slim. So we believe that cardio makes you lose fat, which is a myth in and of itself. So women might feel like doing that, and they might be scared that if they do resistance training, they might actually get big and not feminine anymore, which is also a myth. Whereas guys tend to think that if they want to get big and strong, they need to lift weights. So that's what they do. And normally, what they do is they lift all the time, and they also eat a lot more food because there's also the myth that, you know what they say, eat big to get big. So there's the myth that the more you eat, the more muscle you'll be able to build if you're also lifting weights. So in addition to that, when we first start training in the gym, we see a lot of fast gains. Whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. In the beginning, everybody makes gains very fast. They're called newbie gains because they usually the rate at which you make these gains usually slows down massively within 3 to 6 months, sometimes up to a year, since you start lifting weights. So if you add all of these factors together, so guys eat a lot more, they do resistance training, and they get newbie gains. So what happens is that they'll find themselves getting really big really fast. And also they have this initial slightly higher amount of muscle mass to begin with. So it looks like they literally blow up. So in comparison, a woman is much less likely to engage in the myth that you need to eat big to get big, because as I said, the main myth, the ideal woman is a slim woman. So if anything, women tend to train a bit too hard, especially go quite hard on cardio, or in any kind of activity they do, they train really hard, they're war machines, and they tend to underfuel themselves. So even though they might make newbie gains, the amount of food they're eating might not support making lots of those gains. So they might actually get less newbie gains than they would if they were eating more and fueling themselves properly. And on top of that, they start with slightly less muscle mass than a man. So the overall result, if you put the average woman and the average man who start for the first time in the gym and you compare their results after 6 months, it looks like the man might be blowing up, whereas the woman either stays the same or as a smaller change. And I think therefore that the reason stems from the ideals that society imprints upon us as to in regards to what is the ideal body to have depending on your sex at birth.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a really insightful take on the issue, because I think it's definitely something that for me, when I started going to the gym, I was about 15 or something, and it was very much, I thought, right, I need to have big muscles, and I need to, build my strength, and I'm too skinny and stuff like that. And I think a large part of that comes from me, being male and being treated as such. And that's result, obviously, to start with, you have those newbie gains, but for the first few years didn't pay too much attention to what I was doing, so didn't see massive results, but that was always my goal. And I think, yeah, that's something that I've not thought about before. And I guess as well, if you've got those kind of societal pressures, or your goals are maybe influenced by how you're treated, and what like you said, certain societal ideals are, I guess you're less likely to put yourself. So maybe as a woman, you're the in general, the weight section can be intimidating, and people can feel intimidated by it, because it can be quite new to people, and if you've not got experience, you might not know what you're doing, so that creates sort of this feeling of intimidation, or an uncomfortable feeling within yourself. And if you've got that, for you to step into the weight section means you have to overcome that. But if you've not got like the societal pressure to do that, it's maybe less of a so as a man, you're like, right, well, I should be bigger, so I need to overcome this uncertainty and that sort of thing. So that's potentially another factor at play there, or another way that actually how society treats different genders can impact sort of this myth. And it's interesting. You think it's something quite simple, like, someone thinking a man will get stronger than a woman, but it actually it's a lot deeper than that, and there's a lot more sort of factors there. So yeah, and I think that's a really interesting take on that for sure. So you mentioned as well with that talking about sort of women's muscular endurance being a reason why they can actually benefit from weight training and build strength in a way almost more than a man, because they're able to sort of go a little bit longer in at 80% of their capacity in terms of what they're lifting, and like you said, there's not really enough research to know specifically why that is. But you're okay to touch on sort of what some of the potential reasons are for that, because I think it's good to understand potentially why that might be, why that might happen, so that people can kind of go away and with confidence when doing that, and understand that there is some science behind why they're able to do that, and why they should sort of try to push themselves in those going to higher number of reps and that sort of thing.
Yes, absolutely. So, as far as I am aware, there are two theories that are purported and as the reason behind this, and they also seem quite reasonable, both of them. So, the first theory is doesn't really have to do again with sex. To be honest, I've already mentioned this more than once. I do want to stress that overall, while men and women do have some differences in the way their body is put together, they're not massive differences. We're not talking day and night. We're still members of the same species. So that's another reason why this whole topic is a myth, because we are not so different that there's going to be such a disparity between us on the whole, particularly when you compare people of a similar um, experience, genetic makeup. Like, for example, two extremely high level athletes. Um, one is a man, one is a woman, relatively to their starting points, might have made very similar gains, for example. So I do want people to get away from this with the idea that, yes, there are some differences, but they're not extreme. So, having said that, the two theories I mentioned for why women might seem to have a bit more muscular endurance. The first theory is simply related to body size. Women, on average, are smaller than men. So, if you're in a smaller body, your blood can travel faster from point A to point B. In this particular case, point A will be so point B, the destination of the where the blood is going, is your working muscles. And if your blood can travel there faster, it can take nutrients into those working muscles sooner. If the muscles get nutrients sooner, they can generate the energy they need to complete a rep. So if you get more energy more frequently to complete a rep, the end result is that you're going to be able to complete more reps. This is one theory. The other theory is related to the components of women's muscle cells or muscle fibers. So it seems like, or rather muscles, and those muscles are made up of different muscle cells or fibers. So it seems like, on average, women might have a higher proportion of a type of muscle cell, which is called type 1 fiber, which is a particular type of muscle cell that has greater endurance than other types. So it can it can continue creating muscle contractions for a longer period of time, generating muscle contractions. Although overall those muscle contractions might produce less force than another type, which is called type 2, which instead doesn't have a lot of endurance, so it can only produce force for a really short amount of time, but it can produce a lot of force in that short amount of time. So if women have more of these type 1 fibers, then it's likely that they're going to have a bit more muscular endurance and be able to complete a bit more reps.
Yeah. That does make sense, but I guess, like you said, that there needs to be more, research around that to really define, specifically why. So just looking at that final point, then you talked about sort of women being able to protect from excessive sort of muscle damage with the help of estrogen. So are you able to kind of just give a bit more detail about what estrogen is, just for anyone who's not too clued up on that hormone, and how actually higher levels of estrogen help with that recovery process?
Okay, so men and women have sex hormones, and in particular, women have a higher amount of two sex hormones, which are called estrogen and progesterone. And these two hormones rise and fall; their levels rise and fall throughout a woman's menstrual cycle. So throughout the month, you have increasing levels and then falling levels of estrogen and progesterone. But overall, even when a woman's estrogen levels are low during her cycle, they will still be far higher than a man's, because men also have estrogen, just like women also have testosterone, but the proportion, so how much we have, is different, okay, depending on the sex that you had at birth. So it looks like, from the research that we do have at the moment, the amount of estrogen, well, estrogen in and of itself has potentially a protective effect against muscle damage. So clearly, a woman who will tend to have more estrogen than a man, not tend to have, will have more estrogen than a man, um, then will potentially benefit from this protective effect.
Yeah, and then what's kind of the knock on from that? Why is it beneficial to be kind of protected and be able to recover quicker? Like what from the perspective of building your strength, as that's kind of the myth we're trying to bust. What's kind of the benefit of being able to recover quicker?
Yes, so something that maybe some people are not aware of is that you don't actually build any muscle or strength during the workout itself. That's a time when you're actually undergoing a lot of stress. Your muscles are undergoing a lot of stress. Your body is actually, well, your muscles are actually being broken down by the stress, and that's why resistance training results in muscle damage afterwards. Um, when you actually make those gains that you want, those strength and muscular gains, is in the days, the hours and days after your training session. So actually, the recovery phase is one of the most important components if someone is serious about getting those gains. So, as I said, a certain amount of muscle damage contributes to muscular and strength gains. If we didn't get any damage, our body wouldn't be triggered to get stronger and more muscular because it wouldn't perceive any danger. Basically, the body becomes stronger because it receives the signal that if it doesn't, it's going to die. Now, the body does not want you to die. So, when you lift something that's heavy, the body goes, oh wow, if we want to be able to do that again without dying, we need to get stronger. So what does it do? It waits until you're done with your session because in that at that point it needs to channel all of the energy available towards survival. So you need to be able to complete the session. Afterwards, there's no need to survive anymore. Like it's not an emergency situation. You're not running away from a tiger. Fine. It's the time to rebuild the damaged muscle, and in the rebuilding process, it is made stronger in order to better sustain the same training session that you go and do the next time. And so that's why some muscle damage is important to trigger that strength gaining process, but too much can actually result in, well, yeah, too much can result in overtraining. And if you overtrain, it means you can't recover from the stress that you put on your body through the training session. If the body can't recover effectively, it will channel all of its energy into completing the recovery process, which means there will be very little or no energy left to actually make gains. So that's why being protective from excessive muscle damage basically means that you're potentially enhancing your recovery. And that's potentially why you can recover faster. If you can recover faster, not only can you get more work done more frequently, and to a point, more work in the training room does mean more results. It also means that it's you can sustain more work without overtraining.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's great to highlight the fact that actually it's the recovery aspect which is where you actually build your strength and build that new muscle tissue and that sort of thing. Because I think that's something which gets overlooked because it almost requires it's less of an action, sleeping or resting or whatever, than going to the gym. So a lot of people will highlight or really prioritize that going to the gym and not really think about the recovery element. But actually, that's where a lot of the progress comes from. And obviously, with women maybe being protected from overtraining, then that they're able to actually train a bit more frequently or be at less risk of that overtraining and the sort of negative impacts of it.
Okay, so I do want to stress there that again, the differences are not huge. So if you're a woman and you're extremely hardworking, don't think that you can just go to the gym 6 times per week or even 7, take no rest days, and you're gonna make loads of gains. That's not what I'm saying. The effect is likely very small. It's there, and it should encourage you to go to the gym, but I don't want people to go away from this and think, oh, I can smash myself now and I'm gonna be totally fine. No, recovery needs to still be paramount, because as we've been talking about, if you don't recover well enough, you're basically cutting yourself out of some gains. Like you're just not going to make as many gains as you could.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely an important clarification, and all of this is in the context of dispelling the myth that men will benefit more from weight training than women, or build more strength, and this is obviously a factor. Which means that isn't actually true, but not necessarily a reason why you should not focus on recovery as a woman, or that sort of thing. So definitely good to clarify. But no, I think that's really a lot of information there for people to take away and to understand why actually women and men but will both benefit very similarly from weight training, and can increase their strength and their muscle mass very similarly, and kind of not buy into that myth anymore. So I really appreciate the insight that you've given there, and all of that great sort of information around this topic. Before we go, was there anything you wanted to add just around the whole area of women weight training and that sort of thing?
I just want to thank everyone for watching and listening. I want to thank you for inviting me on again, and I just want to say that if you get nothing else from this conversation, get this: whether you're a woman or a man, you're gonna make a lot. You're gonna gain a lot from resistance training in every area of life. Be it increasing your muscular strength, increasing your amount of muscle mass on the whole, looking a bit better, feeling better in your body. It's going to change the way you think about yourself and about what you can actually do in life. So if you get nothing else, you don't need to know all the science, you don't need to know anything, just know that it's going to benefit you. So get in the gym, or in the home gym.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think that's definitely a great point to end on. So massive thank you again for coming on, and getting involved with the blog and this interview. And for everyone watching, if you have enjoyed this interview, or want to reach out to Nick, then we'll leave all the relevant contact details and social media details below. If you liked the video, then please drop us a little thumbs up, and if you're interested in seeing some of the other interviews and other content we've got coming out on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. I hope you all have exceptional days, and we will catch you on the next video.